How's everyone doing? James from Type here, and today we're talking about the INFJ ENTP relationship. So let's get into it. I think what initially draws INFJs and ENTPs to each other is some level of compatibility, but also chemistry. There's a lot of compatibility with their first and fourth functions, but there's also some chemistry with their incompatibility. ENTPs, they're very well spoken, but they're also very talkative. They like to say what they think a lot. And INFJs, they also have a very strong opinion of what they think. So this can sometimes lead to arguments, debates, but a lot of chemistry that can lead to fights as well. This can sometimes make these types feel like opposites because INFJs are going to lead with their extroverted feeling parent. They're going to try to be more diplomatic, more kind. They're not necessarily going to want to ruffle any feathers with what they think. Whereas ENTPs have a different approach. They're more likely to just be honest, say what's really true, without necessarily considering the emotional consequences of what they say. They're a bit more optimistic to what's going to happen when they say what they think. And this means both of these types can sometimes see themselves as so different. ENTPs are so blunt and direct, whereas INFJs, they're a bit more quiet and considerate. But in reality, these types are much more similar than they probably think. And this really plays into their relationship and their pairing in general. When these types are able to work together, they can accomplish a lot of the same goals as they both have very similar objectives. They both want to use their introverted thinking to speak the truth and be honest, but they also want to use their extroverted feeling to make the world a better place and instill some kind of ethics. And this comes out through their relationship, through the energy that they have. ENTPs, they have this kind of informative, talkative energy where they're bringing up new ideas, sparking new possibilities. And INFJs, they're a bit more direct and to the point. INFJs can take those possibilities coming from the extroverted intuition hero and funnel them down with their introverted intuition hero. This helps them choose and filter between the different ideas and potentials that ENTPs can come up with and pick them more selectively. And then in turn, ENTPs can become more dedicated to these specific ideas and have a more focused direction for what they want. This relationship can have a lot of different roles. It can be a coworker or a friendship or a relationship. If it's a coworker, it may seem more combative, but if you're working together with them, you can be very good at coming up with new ideas. And in a relationship, you can have a lot of good compatibility when it comes to intimacy, but it can also lead to a lot of unnecessary arguments. ENTPs may be more pragmatic. They want to do things independently, do things their own way, whereas INFJs, they're more affiliative. They like working with people. They like discussing things first. They like being able to clear the air before doing anything too independently. If an ENTP goes out of their way and does something super independently, an INFJ may feel disrespected, whereas if an INFJ is always looking for permission, an ENTP may feel like that's just a waste of time and energy. And this can really play into their interaction together, into their deep conversations. While yes, they can have really deep, abstract conversations together where they can figure out a lot of interesting things, it may lead to some conflict as some of their ideas do oppose each other. If these types aren't leading with some kind of humility and understanding of that opposing perspective I talked about before, there can be some problems as they're both going to see the other one as kind of an immature version of themselves. But this can lead to a lot of important growth and learning. This type is, type pair is known as the pedagogue pair, the teaching pair, where both types are able to teach each other a differing perspective. INFJs teaching that diplomacy, being able to smile and be kind and say things in a specific way may actually have you be heard and listened to more, whereas ENTPs can say sometimes, if you really want to help people, sometimes you just have to be direct and blunt and honest. And if you're able to combine these approaches and find that perfect middle ground, you can actually find a very sophisticated strategy which can kind of bend its whims depending on the specific circumstance. If both of these types aren't able to really understand their other perspective and see it that way, there can definitely be problems in communication, though. A lot of times in relationships, people are expecting someone who's really compatible with them, someone who's their golden pair, someone who has the corresponding functions to theirs in all the same order, but it's just not how life works. So when INFJs and ENTPs interact, they can sometimes be looking for things that aren't exactly there. An ENTP may see their honesty as just what's going on in their head. They're just being sincere and authentic. But an INFJ may see it as them being overly critical or as them bearing down on them. But this isn't necessarily their intention. That's because INFJs are more compatible with FI types, feeling types, who are going to put harmony and that kind of emotional well-being over necessarily saying what comes to their mind first. This may cause an ENTP to hurt an INFJ's feelings kind of unintentionally. However, an INFJ may have a difficult time expressing their emotions because they have very low and pessimistic introverted feeling, and they may have a hard time bringing these emotions up, so they kind of fester under the surface leading to some problems down the line. However, these personality types can help each other grow in a more positive way as well, and if they're able to work through some of these issues, it can become better over time. INFJs can help ENTPs learn that conflict is not always necessary to be honest. They can also help them push out of their comfort zone, using their extroverted sensing to give them advice and their NE to advise their future as well in a way that kind of makes sense to an ENTP. This helps ENTPs be more responsible with their feelings and acknowledge their emotions on a higher level when they interact with an INFJ. Whereas INFJs can learn the importance of brutal honesty and extra research and verification, going out of their way to learn more and learn with a little bit more of a skeptical perspective. This in turn makes both of these personality types kind of become better and stronger versions of themselves over time if they're able to get through those rocky phases. On a day-to-day basis, a healthy INFJ-ENTP relationship can look many different ways, but it may look like a lot of compromise. Both types have to be willing to access their shadow functions a little bit more and access a differing perspective. INFJs may have to go out of their way to be more expressive with their emotions, but also understand the importance of critical feedback without being too sensitive. ENTPs, on the other hand, are going to have to understand why sometimes they have to mediate what they say to understand that people might feel bad about it, and try not to say every single thought that comes to their head. In my personal opinion, this relationship can be very important for both of these types because it really forces them to address a different perspective than their own. They're not necessarily just able to use their ego, they have to understand the different sides of their mind, their different pessimism that can be attuned to different functions. And when they're able to kind of see different perspectives and understand how those can be valuable as well, it helps them get out of their own head and understand the world outside of them. This really prevents a kind of crazy ego from forming because it admits that it's not necessarily adept to tackling every single task in the best way, and that it can find different ways of using their own, ideals and desires to get what they want. If you are an INFJ ENTP couple, I think the most important thing to really connect with is what's most important to your relationship. Connect on that foundation of love and respect, and understand that miscommunication and some of these different perspectives don't necessarily blow that up. They're just different ways people want to achieve very similar things. Being able to respect that other perspective and respect that other person's functions in that order really helps these types get along better because they have mutual appreciation for each other's perspectives. When these types are able to grow, learn, and teach each other, this can be a very dynamic relationship that can both be very passionate and compatible, but also have a lot of energy that changes over time. Leave a comment down below if you are these types or any relationship that you'd like me to talk about. And thank you all for watching. If you actually did get to the end, I really appreciate it. And I hope you all have a great day.